Welcome to Behind the Line, where we pull back the curtain on the challenges facing first responders and frontline workers. The work you do is unique, and so are the stresses that go with it. Join me as we tackle key issues to reduce risks for burnout, and as we work to support you in doing the job you love without sacrificing being the kind of person you want to be. Hey there, and welcome back to Behind the Line. I'm your host, Lindsay Faas. If you are new to Behind the Line, what you should know about me is that I'm a clinical counselor specializing in trauma therapy. And after over a decade working with first responders and frontline workers around issues like burnout, compassion fatigue, PTSD, and related OSIs, I have become a passionate wellness advocate and educator for those who sacrifice so much for our communities out on the front lines. Behind the Line is a place for us to talk about the real life behind the scenes challenges facing you on the front lines. I created this podcast with the hope of bringing easy access to skills for wellness, allowing you to find greater sustainability both on the job and off. We are opening a new series that we are calling Normal People Problems, where we're going to tackle challenges that impact everyone, like nutrition, finances, home management, and parenting. But we're going to consider the unique challenges faced by those on the front lines, along with unique tools to help you manage these areas a little bit easier. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by my guest, Raina. Raina is a registered dietitian who is luckily and happily married to a first responder. She's worked in private practice for almost 10 years in weight management and chronic disease management. She feels incredibly passionate about supporting shift workers and first responders increase their energy and improve their health, as she's seen firsthand the toll it can take on them and their families. She's worked with police officers, dispatchers, firefighters, paramedics, heavy equipment operators, physicians, nurses, and other frontline workers using nutrition strategies to fuel their bodies properly for shift work. Welcome, Raina. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. I am so glad that we were able to arrange a time to talk and connect because I'm really excited about this series that we're doing on normal people problems. And I'm so excited that we got to have someone come on who not only can speak to it from the dietitian nutritional standpoint, but from a very specific place of understanding some of the specific concerns for first responders. So let's start there. Tell me about yourself and what led into your work as a dietitian and health coach.
Thank you, Lindsay. This is super fun. I'm very happy to be here. I love connecting with other health professionals in this space. Like I said, I'm a registered dietitian. I've been working for about 10 years in weight management and chronic disease management. And I am married to a first responder. So we live that life in our house, and then I'm doing all this work. And what eventually I realized is I started to work in my practice with other shift workers and people who were doing shift work. So I'm like, oh, I get it. We do it too. And then I started to look into the research more for them. And then I panicked because the research was so bad. And I never knew, I didn't know as a dietitian, I didn't know as my husband was a shift worker, I just had no idea. And so that really led me down this path and started my own private practice specifically in the world of shift work. And I connect with a lot of first responders in that world. And I just couldn't see anything that was really good, specific, practical, tangible strategies for them to be able to put in place to fit with their crazy schedule, because it's crazy. And so there's challenges with being a first responder, and my husband's in law enforcement specifically. So there's challenges with that job itself. And then there's challenges with shift work. And then when you combine them, it's just what do I do? So
exactly.
That's where it led me to where I am now.
Yeah. Well, and I always find it funny because from the therapist seat, those are the pieces that I often get that are I'm here for therapy. I need to do all of this work about traumatic exposure and high stress and how I calm and regulate my nervous system and how I support better coping and all of those things. And then it's hilarious because people often will come in and report things like, I know I don't eat well. I know I don't sleep well. I know that my fitness is all over the map. I know that, right? Like all of these very practical kinds of concerns. And I can speak to some of them, but it's hard to speak. It's hard to be the expert on all of the things.
Oh, you can't. Yeah.
Right. Which is why I love getting to have these kinds of conversations and bringing in people who get to be the expert about that thing. Right. And so I really hope that people listen in, because I think that you have this very unique perspective, not just as a dietitian who understands the like physiological practical pieces, but also from the lived experience of being someone who cares about a first responder and has done the work to figure out beyond what normal people might need that looks like diet and health and nutrition. What specifically do shift workers, do people who are doing these high stress, high exposure jobs need in order to support their health? I love it.
They need a team. I honestly feel like they need it, like exactly what you said. And I've done a lot of thinking, like reflect on this, is like I feel like they need a team of healthcare professionals specific to them. Like they need a physician who understands and really, I think, supports circadian rhythm. They need the mental health support that can give them the coping skills they need to deal with what they see on the job, because this is their everyday. But like for me as just a citizen, if I'm calling a first responder, it's the worst day of my life, but it's their everyday. So anyway, so I think that's so important to have that support. I think they need sleep specialists. I think they actually need a whole team, physical therapy, fitness experts. So I don't see a lot of people actually doing that, surrounding themselves with a team to support themselves, because it feels like, we should just be able to make it through. It's just a job. Yeah. And I don't think it's just a job. But so that's my first big overarching thing.
We could choose all the things in the world.
If you could just get everything you need. Yes. But I think one of the key things to understand, and I've kind of come to this realization, like muddling through the research and that sort of, and working with people, is just the understanding, first of all, that when you work shift work, you're actually jet lagged. And that's what the physical response that shift work creates in our body. So you don't get used to that physically, and you actually have to be really proactive in helping manage that, because we get used to feeling tired, and I think they get used to feeling like just this certain level of fatigue that's just there all the time as we flip back and forth through these rotating shifts. But I think the first responder community, because primarily they are doing shift work, that's part of what comes with the position, is that and from the family side of it too. When I learned that, I was like, I get it. And I wasn't like,
that's like a very different context to try to like anchor it to.
Yeah. So I think when we understand that and some of the physiology that comes behind that, and how we eat and when we eat to help manage that, that's really changed some of my clients' perspective on what they're doing with their food. So it's kind of a bigger, broader answer, and there's so much we can do specifically. But I think that's one of the things that I think first responders just need to know about their bodies, what's happening when you flip back and forth between days and nights. You're jet lagged.
Totally. Well, and I think that's a great place. So one of the questions I have for you are, what are some of the challenges that you see in your work with first responders and frontline workers? And I think that that's a really good, solid one. I think that there are probably others. So I want to dive into that a little bit more. Okay. So what are some of the other challenges that you notice with this population?
I would say number one I see a lot is no time to eat. You can go from, again, I've worked with a lot of nurses, especially these past couple of years during the pandemic, absolutely run off their feet. You're wearing a mask all the time. You're in your PPE. Like you can't stop and grab a drink of water. You can't stop and eat when you need to. And then in the first responder community, I see this a lot. Paramedics, firefighters, dispatchers, law enforcement can go from call to call to call to call. And depending on your just physical environment, you're in your vehicle, maybe in your ambulance, whatever, there's not a lot of room, or you don't have an opportunity to bring food all the time, or we haven't had time to prep, or whatever it is. So no time to eat is probably the greatest challenge that I see. And I worked with an RCMP officer in the lower mainland in BC there, and she could just get slammed with calls. And she said it felt like there was no time to eat in the day, but at the end of the day, then she would come home and just eat everything because she was so hungry, and then absolutely crash and go to bed. And so that's obviously very hard on our body physically, but sometimes that's just the logistical demands of the job.
Totally.
So that's the number one challenge I see. The other one I see is just, what are your food options at night?
Yeah.
Like zero. McDonald's, like all of our fine dining establishments that are fully available for us at night.
Right.
So that I'd say is the next big thing, is that if we haven't had a chance to prep or like to pack the things that we want to, is we have to resort to the only things that are open at night. And especially in law enforcement, some of those places want you around. They want your presence.
Right.
The police officers kind of coming in and out or being around the drive-through or whatever. And so they offer discounts, or they offer free food or free coffee or whatever it is. So
they make it appealing.
Totally. So it's not really it's not our fault or the first responders' fault when we're trying to eat healthy, but the only option we have is not the healthiest. So I'm not slamming McDonald's. I'm saying, like, I think there's things that we can do when our options are limited. We just have to be strategic about it. So
totally.
So that's challenge number 2. And I think the third challenge that I often see is just how your body responds to fatigue, especially in the middle of the night. Is that we experience really strong cravings. So you could have the most beautiful, perfect lunch prepped, but your body will crave the things that gives it the fastest source of energy when we're tired. So that's high carb, high fat foods, which in turn make us feel worse typically in the middle of the night. But it's hard when our cravings are for things that other than what you've packed and prepped. So those are, like, I would say 3 common challenges that I see a lot that we have to be really strategic about. So
I love it. Those are really great ones. I would say that there's a couple others that piggy on the ones you've shared that I hear a couple times. So like it kind of bridges between the time and what's open too that you mentioned. Is I often hear about, it's daytime, I could stop anywhere. But because time is really limited and we're run off our feet, if I only have 5 or 10 minutes to run in and grab something, right? I have clients who are paramedics or law enforcement who are running in and grabbing like a gas station sandwich. Because that's what they can go grab. And even then they're getting in trouble for stopping for that like 2 minutes while they're gassing up the ambulance or the car anyways. And running in to get something that they can eat, right? And so it's this mixture of like, even when there are other options available, it's hard to choose great options because what's fastest is what's necessary, and what's fastest isn't usually what's ideal for us. I also think that third one you listed, like physiologically, our body is craving what gives us the most energy the fastest. I also think that like we also get sent by emotionally, psychologically, this piece of I've had a hard day, right? Or like I've earned or I deserve or I long to treat myself with not the beautiful lunch that I prepped and I like planned and I grocery shopped and I did all the things to have this like lovely, beautiful, nutritious meal. What my internal self really is craving is the junky chips because it makes me feel like I am treating myself. I'm catering to this, like, I need this. I feel like I've earned this because it's been a tough day. But there's not a lot of days that aren't tough days. And so, like, that's a downward spiral pretty quick.
So true. Yes. I see that a lot. And I've done that, right? Even as a mom.
True, right?
Oh, this was a long day. As soon as that kid's in bed, I'm going to go do whatever. So and you would know more about this than I would, but just even those reward pathways that are made in our brain when we turn to a certain food and we get that dopamine hit and the donut tastes good, or like the Big Mac is so good, or the junior bacon chicken, I don't know, whatever it is.
Right.
So yes, there has to be some support and some strategies around those things. And it's not that we can't have those foods, but from my perspective, I think what I see is food food is often that coping mechanism. And I saw that so much in the pandemic. Like we couldn't do any other things really to release endorphins. And so food became the primary way that we could get a little endorphin release. Like food was one of the only sources of joy, it seemed like, for a lot of people. So that changed a lot of things, I think, for a lot of my clients too. So yeah, see that lots.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly, I think that's also added this variable to some of the like time and access pieces, is that even with the pandemic, there were two changes that I think also enlisted a different way of understanding how we interact with things like restaurant and fast food. One is that we were really encouraged to support restaurants and small businesses, right? And so it was this idea, but like also altruistically, I am helping by spending money at this restaurant. I'm saving the world just a little bit at a time. But second to that, we also evolved technology that met needs that we didn't need to have the same way before. So like, I know that one of the things I am guilty of, don't tell my husband, thankfully he doesn't listen to this, is that a lot of restaurants developed online ordering so that you could do contactless ordering, right? And so there are still 4 restaurants in my immediate surroundings that are within a 2-minute walking distance that do that, where I can come in at 9 o'clock in the morning and place my order to pick up at noon. And it is ready for me. So I am like, when I am busy in the ambulance, I don't have to settle for some things, but then I'm eating like sushi from wherever because I can online order it and have it ready for a certain time, right?
Totally. Yeah, pros and cons to that.
So many trade-offs.
There could be a great benefit to that, and then it can also just, when we're trying to maybe like either be more budget friendly or like more health conscious, like, okay, I'll pack my own stuff from home. And so like when we eat out in restaurants, especially like 3 times a week or more, that can lead to an increase of about 30% of your calorie intake over that week. So that can be a lot when it comes to like, if you're trying to watch your weight, or if we're trying, like, we've got other health goals in place. And so even if you were to make something similar at home, if you can, I can't make sushi, so that one's totally out for me.
Right, but that one's out.
If you could make something similar at home, you could drop that calorie content by quite a bit just because of how restaurants make their food. So
totally,
I think, both pros and cons to some of the technology that's available to us. So I think my perspective when it comes to the diet and nutrition stuff is that nothing should be eliminated. Nothing should be cut out. I think we should just be smart and have a plan. Like, okay, if I do need to eat out, what's my plan? Where are my go-tos? And like, what are the things that I'm going to get from those places that I both enjoy and that I can feel good about doing? Versus like, okay, if I've packed and planned and prepped, and I've got some accountability structure in place, and I've got some guidance or some support in these areas, and so I'm working on following through with that to the best of my ability. So we shouldn't expect ourselves to be perfect in this. Please be perfect if you're like helping me through a health crisis. That's good. We can have areas, I think, where you can tap into some of our perfectionist mentalities. I don't think nutrition is actually one of them. I don't think it pays off in the long run. I think it just causes more stress when we try to be too perfect with our diet. So
totally. Well, and for sure there's places where like having a standard is one thing, right? And a really high standard is of value. But I think there's also places where we have to give ourselves permission to be human.
Oh man.
So and if we don't, like, we end up undermining our own efforts, right? Like when we get caught in the perfectionistic kind of bullshit, we get stuck in that place of when I slip a little, it feels like absolute failure.
Yeah.
And then we're so busy beating ourselves over the head with that it's harder and harder to like do the thing we're trying to do.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things I've seen lots is just what I call like a kind of the toilet bowl spiral, and it connects to sort of that all or nothing mentality where it's like, I'm going to do this perfectly, or I'm not going to do it at all. So as soon as we start in on something, and this time of year is a perfect example because we're like, January 2nd, I feel like crap, so therefore I'm going to start a new clean eating regime. And so we do that, and then as soon as we kind of fall off that, it's like, well, I had that thing, so now my day's shot, so now I might as well now go have this. It's like, well, now my weekend's gone, so now I might as well do this because I already did all these other things. And then we just feel worse and worse, and we just kind of keep spiraling down, and that mindset is never helpful as far as like just trying to live like a good, healthy lifestyle, it never helps ever.
Mm-hmm.
So we just figure out like, how do we stop that toilet bowl spiral down, and like, just like, it's okay. Just, that was fine. To eat a donut is fine. Let's get back on track to wherever I feel the best. So
yeah, totally. It's hilarious to me because I think we all know that. Like, we all know that it's not helpful.
I know.
And yet we so tend towards it. I'm like, guilty as charged, right? Like, I'm right in that too, where there's days that you're like, I mean, I already screwed that up, so I must, right? Like, go big or go home. We'll wait till Monday to start.
I know.
Reset.
I know.
And then
that is a magical day.
But Mondays are a terrible day to restart things, because right? Like, it's never going to be easier. So, like, how do you just make incremental, mildly better choices moment to moment?
I know.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about some of the challenges that are unique to first responders. I'm curious, in working with them, what do you find like different working with them versus working with other populations?
It takes more time, just because of how what their job's done, how long shifts are, and their shift schedule. So when I'm working with somebody who's got, I'll just say like the normal Monday to Friday gig, like myself, pretty normal, and we're working on some of their like workplace strategies or stuff like that. They've got 5 out of 7 days a week, and then they can repeat, and it feels like they can, okay, if I didn't get it on Monday, I can try again on Tuesday, and then I've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then repeat. So there's a lot of consistency there. For some of my clients, their schedule is consistent, but they've just got like, they're maybe a 4 on, 4 off schedule, or they've got 2 days here and then 4 off, and then 3 days here and then 2 off. And so it's very sporadic. And so to feel any sort of consistency in your diet routine actually takes longer. And so, especially for putting in strategies for night place, I'm like, okay, here's the meal time, I want you to actually try. And then they get 2 nights here, but then they don't do another set of night shifts for like maybe another week or 2. And so it's that piece of it I find different than just the normal population.
Totally.
The other thing too is just when you eat is obviously so different, because you're awake just for different hours of the night, and your schedule is different. So we have to, like, my goal is to kind of take each person's schedule and say, okay, how long can you sleep for? And when are you waking up? When should you have breakfast? When should you not? And so the research is actually pretty clear on how we best support your circadian rhythm based on when you eat and what eating overnight actually does to the body. So there's definitely specific things we're trying to do for shift work, and for the first responder, for the frontline workers, to help their night shifts feel better, but also to make sure that they're eating enough. So I think when we just get busy, and I've heard this lots too, is that when you just don't have time to eat, we're just not really eating enough. And then obviously your body feels that. Yeah,
totally. So one of the other things I think is like not normal for like not all first responders, specifically fire, is fire does this really unique thing of eating together. Right? It's weird. It can be beautiful. It can be lovely. That's a thing that they do. But for people who are trying to be mindful of how and when and what they're choosing to eat, the expectation is that you're participating in this thing we do culturally while you're here at the station, and that you're not just participating in eating the food, but in like buying the food, making the food, cleaning up after the food. And so I've got a couple of clients who are like celiac, for example, who actually buy groceries for the station, participate in making a meal, sit down while eating this meal, and are responsible for helping to clean up after this meal that they eat none of because it actually makes them ill, and they have to sit down with a meal they brought and microwave it separately. But the expectation is still that you participate in this cultural thing, which I think can have lovely pieces. But for those who are maybe on the outside of or are trying to make different choices, it's like this unique complication that adds to it.
There's always going to be, when we're eating together in a group, that social pressure to eating, like whether that's a restaurant or in like the fire hall sort of situation. And I've definitely worked with some clients before who said, like, I just eventually stopped eating what they were cooking because I didn't feel good when I ate that food, and then I had to work the rest of my shift. So that's brutal because there's, like I said, I think it's awesome that they have, it's like that really family tight situation, and many like first responders have that kind of tight knit group feeling, that community or bonding or brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever that looks like. But so I think that's awesome, but I think there are so many challenges, like you said, and so that's a pretty deep rooted cultural thing that I don't think will just change overnight, but what it looks like supporting those individuals can be so different. The other thing that firefighters get to do too is they often get to sleep on their shifts. And so if they get a chance to go and sleep overnight, which is awesome and fantastic, but then they're waking up here and there, then I think in working with some of my clients, then they feel confused, like, well, should I be eating after I wake up? Or does my body still think it's night? Or should I be doing it? Or like, how should I sleep when I get home then? Because if I've got some sleep there, but not enough, and then, so that's different than just potentially when you're on the ambulance, or if you're a nurse or whatever, or if you're dispatching, you just have to be up all night. And so you don't get the same opportunity to go and sleep. So fire is unique in a couple of those things that makes their schedules just like, you really have to sit down and try and map it out and say, okay, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. And then, so you can feel confident in knowing how to manage some of these aspects that come with your job.
Totally. Well, and that's the thing, right, is that they are really unique. And even how like one hall operates is going to be different than how a different hall operates. Like there's all these nuances to it that make it even that like conversations like this can have a ton of value, but there's still ways that it maybe needs to get like personalized and tweaked.
It does. Yeah, it totally does.
Fair. Okay.
Behind the Line is sponsored by Beating the Breaking Point. Beating the Breaking Point is a 7-part online training program designed specifically for first responders and frontline workers, and tailored to fill the gaps in your training to support resilience and sustainability. Whether you're new to the work and wanting to cultivate tools to prevent burnout, compassion fatigue, and related concerns, or you are deep into your years on the job and have gone a few rounds with burnout and other mental health challenges, this program offers the foundational pieces you need to support personal and professional wellness for the long haul. You are a helper. You love your work and you sacrifice a lot. Investing in you and your sustainability is the best gift you can give yourself and those who lean on you. We make this program as risk-free as possible by offering a limited money-back guarantee to ensure that it's a fit for you. If you enjoy Behind the Line, you are going to love this program. Google Beating the Breaking Point Lindsay and find everything you need to get started, or use the link in the show notes. Now, back to the episode.
So let's talk general then. What are some of the pieces generally that are key for first responders and frontline workers in terms of what they need to be aware of and keep in mind when it comes to diet, nutrition, and health? What are your like top things that they need to be focused on?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I get asked is when should I be eating? Right? And working around the clock. Should I have breakfast when I wake up? Should I have breakfast before I go to bed? Because that's breakfast time. Like what they just feel so turned around. And again, it kind of relates back to that jet lag sort of thing. So one of my biggest strategies is to keep us on this time zone, to minimize that impact of jet lag. You still need to follow our normal eating hours as much as you can. So that breakfast should happen in our typical breakfast hours, like maybe 6 to 8 a.m. I don't know, somewhere around there potentially. And then we still want to be having, if we can, because I know every day is different. That lunch should happen at a relatively normal lunchtime. Supper should happen at a relatively normal supper time if we can. Right. The difference being is that when you're actually sleeping through some of those meal timings, I'll flip them to into a different part of the night. But the research is really, really clear on this, is that when we eat throughout the night, especially the hours between like midnight and 6 or 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., it is brutal for our body and for our health. So for many of my clients have got just nasty gut issues because we're having our biggest meal probably between 2 and 4 a.m. We don't have the same digestive enzymes to actually be able to handle that food during the night like we do during the day. So then it's really important that we're watching some of that meal timing. Because shift workers at high risk for heart disease and cancer and diabetes, one of the main reasons is because we're eating those meals at night. And again, as we talked before, what's available to us? McDonald's or whatever. So if we're eating that stuff at night, from our health perspective, it's terrible. My husband's got a stomach of a rock. He can have a Big Mac at 3 a.m. and it is no problem. I can eat like 2 almonds and I'm like, like hunched over in pain. Like my gut can't seem to handle that. But some people, it's like it doesn't actually bug them. But from a long-term health perspective, I'm like, oh, please no, please no.
Well, so that's the thing, right? It might have bugged them today.
Yeah.
But it's this like trickle down effect that carries over long term. Yeah.
So, I think one of the most practical things we can do, if possible, is that the research says if you can, create a fast from midnight to 6 a.m., mimicking us sleeping overnight. Because your gut doesn't know that you're awake, even though your brain is awake. Your gut still thinks it's nighttime and it wants to be asleep and resting and restoring and not digesting food. So that's going to be very hard if we haven't eaten enough during the daytime hours that we are awake. So this is where it gets a little bit sticky and complicated, because it depends on how long you can sleep and it depends on your calorie needs. Like between myself and my husband, there's a big difference in calorie and energy levels. Yeah. And based on what our two bodies need. And so we have to map that out, and we have to kind of get all those things and then say, where's that going to fit in the time that we have if we still need to create a fast for your body overnight. Yeah. So that's one of the practical things we can do, is just minimize that food intake that we're having. If you're hungry, you should eat. But it's not going to be, hopefully, our biggest meal. It's going to maybe be a good balanced snack or something like that. Something that's not going to really impact blood sugar levels, or it's not going to be just like super high in fat, especially fast food type of fat. So this one is easier said than done, but many of my clients feel way, way better when they cut back on that food intake between those hours.
Totally. That's a good one. I never would have thought of how, it makes sense to me. It surprises me that I wouldn't have thought of it, but like how that circadian rhythm piece meshes with how our bodies are digesting food, and how those pieces kind of fit together in such a nice packaged way, which when you're working normal people jobs works fine and isn't super problematic. But for sure, when you're expected to like go pull someone out of a burning building at 4 o'clock in the morning, and your needs and demands may feel at conflict with some of that basic way our bodies function, which it feels like it just reaffirms for me. I feel like I've said this for a really long time, that like no one is actually built to do these jobs. Like when we were made, for however we were made, however you believe we came about to exist in the world, no one was built and wired to do jobs like this. We were built to sleep at night. We were built to eat in the day. We were built in a given way. And so it's always funny to me, because I have a lot of people who will talk about like, well, maybe I just can't hack it because my body struggles to stay up, and because my body struggles with finding a way to go off of nights and into days. And I'm often like, no, that's not like a you thing. That's not like a you're not good enough at this thing. That's like a you're human, and nobody's brain is made for this. No one's. It's not meant to do this.
Right. Well, and that's so true, because as a species, the Homo sapiens species, we're diurnal. Like bats are nocturnal and owls are nocturnal, but we are not. We're not nocturnals. We're made diurnally, so that we're made to be awake during the daytime hours. And everybody has a different chronotype. So that early bird or that night owl, and that's in our DNA. So for some of my clients, like if you are more naturally that early bird kind of chronotype, day shift will probably feel easier and night shift will always feel harder. You're going to feel like you slog through that. But on the flip side, if you're a night owl, you probably actually prefer your night shifts to your day shifts. So for some people, just depending on what they're working, one is going to feel a little bit more natural, or a little bit easier to make it through than the other.
Totally. Yeah.
So such a good point. Yeah, we're not built for this. Some people can do it a little bit easier, a little bit more naturally, but none of us are made to especially flip back and forth.
Well, that's the piece, right? It's like, regardless, no one is all of the types, right?
Yes.
And so to do flipping is hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, and even like the night owl people I know are still not typically up and at 'em at 4, right? So like, while night shift might be easier on the front end of night, by the time we hit the back end of night, no one's cool. No one is good with this anymore.
No, I think the most common, and I've had the opportunity to do some training with our local police force here, and the most common answer I heard when I said, "What's the hardest part of your night shift?" Between 4 and 6 a.m. Most common. And so by that point, like, your sleep drive's probably so high and the fatigue is just crazy. And even if you are a night owl, it doesn't matter. That's still crazy hard. I think where that DNA driven thing makes a difference is how well you can sleep in during the day to catch up and to actually give your body the rest that it needs. So much. This is where I just nerd out. There's so much that I feel like, we should work. Oh, okay, we need to talk about this. So, and I really try and stay in my lane from the nutrition side of things. But like, your gut and your brain are so closely connected. So like you said, when that stress level that is so commonly associated with this type of work, when that gets high and not managed well, and food becomes coping mechanisms, and then our guts get thrown off because we're so stressed and like, it's a lot. There's so much, I think, for this demographic, and I obviously feel so passionate about it because it's my husband too, it's my family too. So, and then I see his coworkers, and I see our friends, and I see the dispatchers I work with, and the paramedics, and just like what they give, and the toll it takes on their body physically, or on their families, or whatever it is. They deserve all the support in the world, and they sometimes get the bottom of the barrel when it comes to their benefits and that sort of thing. Like I've had clients who are just accountants or whatever, and excellent jobs. I'm not shaming any of that, but they have like thousands of dollars in all these benefits, and they come to me like, I've got thousands of dollars to spend. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And then you talk with a firefighter or a police officer, and they're like, I don't have any nutrition coverage. Like I don't get it. I don't get it.
I know.
Anyways, that's my rant.
I feel like we could go on a totally different diverging that direction, and I could follow
back on track.
There, Raina. I could follow you. Okay, so we've kind of talked broad strokes, what some of the like hardest parts are, and I love this piece about having a fast and being conscientious of that fast happening from about midnight to 6 a.m. where possible. Recognizing there may be some like caveats to that dependent on kind of the scenario. What are some of the tips, tricks, or tools that you suggest for those who are serving in these roles to support better nutrition without adding to their already high stress levels? So like I heard you talk a little bit about prep. I feel like that might be a piece we want to touch on. I also wonder about like gut health. Are there things that we can or should be doing to help support or stabilize that? Like I hear a lot about like, well, I should be taking a probiotic, but not the crappy probiotic, the really high quality probiotic that costs $1 billion. And I know everyone has the things they've heard. So what are the things that you really anchor to and focus on and encourage this population to really, if you're gonna spend time and energy on anything, these are the things?
Yeah, so good. How much time do I have? No, I'm kidding. I'll make this quick.
As much as you want.
Okay.
We'll take what we can get.
So I'll come back to that fast idea. So after doing that piece of it, what is actually very important is to have a breakfast then before going to bed. And what will help make this successful is to spend a little bit of time and effort actually meal prepping some quick breakfast things that we can do to have ready for us. Because if you come home from a long night shift, or even if you're waking up early because you've got an early start to your shift, and you're not an early morning person like that, we won't take time for breakfast. We don't have the time. We have to hit the road. We've got a call coming in, whatever it is. We're not going to have that time. So if we actually meal prep some quick breakfast things, and it's literally like Greek yogurt parfaits, maybe some overnight oats, maybe I've sometimes done like little mini omelets baked in muffin tins.
Yes.
And those freeze well. I bought some from Costco recently that were done for me, like little mini frittatas. Awesome. Because then it's literally, you can pop it in the microwave or whatever, and it's very, very fast. So breakfast before you go to sleep after a night shift is very important to protect your sleep quality, so that you're not waking up from hunger, especially if you've been fasting overnight. The other thing it does is it helps tell your body what time it is, so that it keeps us in our time zone, minimizes that impact of jet lag, etc. So that's one time that we should actually be having breakfast, is still, again, within that, like maybe 6 to 8 a.m., somewhere around there, after you finish that overnight fast. Whatever that looks like. It will be easier if we put a little bit of effort into prepping breakfast. Breakfast should, if we can, absolutely include protein. That will really help stabilize your blood sugar levels, whether you're starting a day shift or whether you're coming home and you're going to be going to bed. I don't normally suggest like a Ricky's Brekkie bowl. Like if you're coming home from a night shift and trying to go to bed, that's not the time to like hash browns and sausages and pancakes and bacon.
All the greasy things that my body's going to get real angry about.
It's going to sit pretty heavy if you're trying to go to sleep. But if we're just doing something that's a good protein source, it's maybe a little bit lighter, maybe a smoothie, maybe that's all it is. It's just a nice shake or something, like protein powder
in it or something.
Totally. That should sit pretty easy for our gut to be able to get a good quality sleep. Or on the flip side, it could be the same breakfast for your day shift. Your energy levels are going to feel better throughout the morning. You'll feel fuller for longer, so that you're not just immediately crashing in the morning right away. So that piece of it, I actually spend a lot of time with my clients focusing on that breakfast side of it, because we skip it a lot, or we just don't feel like eating it when we're waking up super early in the morning. So that's still an important thing to do. The balance at each meal and snack that you do, and this is something that gets a little bit more specific for each person, but if our meals are all carbohydrates, and carbs are easy and they're fast and they're accessible and we can get them anywhere, but if that's typically what we're having over the course of the day, then our blood sugar levels do this, and our mood follows that, and we feel that in our energy levels over the course of the day, and so it just kind of feels like a roller coaster. So some of those strategies and some of those very simple meal prep things that we can put in place to have protein at each meal and snack. And of course, I recommend a lot of vegetables in my clients' life. And so because of their fiber content, because of their nutrient content, because of how they keep your bowel movements regular, and they lower cholesterol, and they prevent chronic disease, and they stabilize your blood sugar levels, and they keep you fuller for longer on fewer calories. Like there's so many obviously great benefits, but so the balance at each meal really has to be there for us to be feeling good energy, to be feeling stable, to be feeling satisfied, and just to be hitting our body's nutrient needs that we can through food as much as we possibly can. So
perfect.
So I recommend, I've got some stuff sitting on my desk, like that we're not just doing a carb all by itself. So like this apple, we're not just doing a piece of fruit potentially by itself, even though it's fast and easy and it's nutritious. This is a good food. But I always recommend, if you can, I've got a little piece of cheese here, to pair things together, like a protein and that carbohydrate together. It will make your body feel so much different. So if we're having multiple food groups coming in together at one time, you'll feel it. You'll feel that difference in your energy levels and in your digestion and all of that sort of stuff. So simple things like that. And there's so much to the meal prep and so many strategies that we can get into that way. I'm a huge fan of simple, and I don't cook terribly gourmet unless I'm feeling really zippy or energetic or whatever. Like our style is just so pretty basic, and I think balanced and healthy eating doesn't need to be gourmet. It can be fast, it can be simple, and we can use some of the stuff that's more convenience type foods in our grocery stores that are coming out now to our advantage if we can.
Totally.
So a couple of things that way. The third thing I think that I probably should really touch on is caffeine, because
as I have my gigantic Starbucks.
And I'm on my cup number 2 here in front of me. I have yet to meet a shift worker. No, actually, that's not true. There's a rare breeds out there who don't drink caffeine, and like kudos to you. I would say majority of the population we use it a lot because of the demands of the job, and we just need to be awake and alert to actually do what we're doing. The sad part is that we can become desensitized to it. So the more we have, the more your brain adapts to having those higher levels of caffeine, and it just doesn't work for us like we hope it will, or we want it to, saying we need more and more and more to actually get any benefit from caffeine. So that's one of the things I work on with my clients is like, do not wait till your sleepiest part of the night, if you can, to actually be going to grabbing something from 7-Eleven or hitting up a drive-thru going to get a coffee, because caffeine can take about 6 to 8 hours to metabolize out of our body. So if that's the case and you get something, so if your sleepiest time of the night shift is that 4 to 6 a.m. period, which is the most common time, again, I've heard. So if you grab something at say 4:30 or 5 a.m. and then, but you're off at 6 or 7 and you want to be in bed by 8, caffeine will be in your system for another 3 to 4 hours after that. So most of my clients will just go home and crash. They're tired. Like they'll sleep anyways, but it really can affect our sleep quality. So we're not getting the rest we need. So one of the strategies I recommend is don't wait until your sleepiest moment to caffeinate. Back it up so that you've got a better opportunity to actually have caffeine at the right time and metabolize it out by the time you want to go to bed. So it's things like that where it's like, it's not that you can't have it, but we should dose it right. We should use as little as we can to help us feel good, so that we stay sensitive to it. So we're not just like crushing a rock star in 30 seconds to get an immediate hit. So I know it's hard. Like these jobs are hard based on what they demand. So caffeine, the timing of your meals, and the balance at each meals. I know that was a kind of a broad overview, but it really gets so specific for each person. But those things will really impact our health in the long run, how our shifts feel, all of that stuff.
Perfect. Those are some great tips. I think that those are super valuable because I think that they're really like practical takeaways that anyone can kind of take and work at applying, and then see where it's working, see where it's hard, see where it's maybe sticking a little bit, and maybe refine from there. So it's like a great place just to like start from. Right? Yeah. So good.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, I hope that helps for our listeners. Like I said, there's so much we can do, and yet I think if the foundations of everything is your portion sizes, what your body needs, how many calorie levels or how many calories you need in a day, and when you eat that food, if we get those two right, then everything else is kind of gravy.
Totally.
And we can refine from there. But nailing down those two things are just so foundational to everybody, but especially when we throw in the mix the demands of these jobs.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm in my wrap-up question. I guess my last question is there anything else that you feel is like super important for our listeners to hear or know? And with that, I also want you to talk a little bit about what it looks like for people to connect and work with you, if that's a thing that in hearing all of this, they're like, yes, I've done what I can do. I feel like I need some support and help tweaking. Totally. What does that look like? What do you offer? How does that look?
Okay. I think such an important thing is food is fuel. Our performance at our job is really going to be impacted by how we eat. And so a lot of times food feels optional. When I get a chance, I'll stop and grab a bite. And I think if we flip our mindset around food is like, this is my fuel. This is really impacting my workouts. Like how well I'm able to progress maybe my training, or it's impacting my cognitive, my decision, my logic on my job, or it's impacting even my mood and my relationships with my clients or with my family or whatever. I think we have to switch how we think about it. So especially for the shift working demographic, for my first responders or the frontline healthcare workers or anybody who's in that role, man, this is so... this will really impact how you're able to do your job. So I think that's so important to me. I'm biased, obviously, in that perspective. But as far as like taking it to the next level and what does that actually look like, and lots of people are just starting with these strategies and starting to feel good, but eventually we get to the point of like, but how much does my body actually need? And out here, and I'm sleeping here, and I'm doing this here, and how do I fit all these puzzle pieces together? I kind of offer two different options. Obviously, I do one-on-one nutrition counseling options, and I have a few different packages just based on how much time somebody wants to kind of spend. It's like, you know what, I want to spend a year working on this because I feel like there's so much I need. So you have those options of just individual one-on-one nutrition counseling, like with kind of any nutrition professional support. The other option that I've started to offer this year is like an online course sort of thing, because shift work, as I've seen in my own house, like it's very hard for us to commit to like Tuesday night at 7 p.m. for a year. Like we can't. We'll miss half of it. And so the program that I've pulled together it's a 12-week program, but it kind of goes through all the foundational things. So everybody gets their own personalized nutrition recommendations, but it's a hybrid of both like live teachings and then recorded sessions. So if you can't make the live teaching, that recorded session is available for you when you can come and grab it. So you get a resource bundle, you get all this stuff pulled together. And so it's a more affordable and I think more accessible option than a one-on-one individual program. But some people absolutely need one-on-one because of maybe it's a health condition or they're like a high-performing athlete and doing this job or whatever it is. So, but I've had some really great success and really great feedback from some of my participants going through the course. So those are kind of the two options if somebody feels like, I want to take this to the next level. So
that's awesome. Raina, I so appreciate the work you're doing and that you are doing it in this way that is really conscientious of this population, that goes to such great lengths to protect our communities, and that I so often feel like we're letting them down. And so I love when I find other professionals that are like, no, we have to honor what these people are doing and support them in doing that as effectively as they can, because I need them there when my kid is sick, when my family's at risk. I want them to be okay so that we're okay. And so I so value that that's work that you are pouring specific effort into, because I think that that's not as common as I wish it were.
Well, same to you, Lindsay. I get excited anytime anybody who is like coming around and like wrapping around our first responder community, just like, especially as a spouse, I'm just like, thank you. So it's just,
mutual admiration. I love it. I want to say one more big thank you to Raina for taking the time to join me today. And thank you, amazing listeners, for continuing to spend time with me here. If you value this podcast and want to help us in our mission to support frontline wellness, there are 3 ways you can do just that. Number 1, rate and review Behind the Line on Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening. Number 2, follow me on social media at Lindsay A. Faas and engage with me in this amazing little community that we're building there. Every time that you like, comment, and share our posts, you help us spread like wildfire thanks to the magic of the algorithm. And last but not least, share this resource and our other resources with those you know, whether that's forwarding our weekly newsletters on to your friends and coworkers, listening to the podcast as part of a team meeting, or using our burnout indicators checklist and triage guide as a staff-wide assessment tool. Every little bit helps us take our mission to the next level and serve those who are sacrificing so much to serve our communities out on the front lines. Know that we can be found online on our website, on most major podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. We make all of our resources available to you because the work you do matters. But more than that, you matter. And we want to make sure that you have what you need to keep up the good work at work, as well as in your real life outside of work. So use it and share it. And until next time, stay safe.